Awesome. Well, here we are at 2:00. So let's be prompt and ridiculous and get started on this final session. I'm so excited. So welcome everyone, all of our participants and our panelists. I'm Jessica Gelter. I'm the Executive Director of Arts Alive and leader of the arts track of Radically Rural, which was created in partnership with some amazing folks, including Amanda Whitworth, who is on our panel this afternoon. There are a few housekeeping things that I want to address to you guys. I'm sure some of you who have already attended our sessions have heard these before, but we've got a few things to go over. First is there is the option to chat with other participants, both in our session and our event, right on the right-hand side. If you would like to practice using that, go ahead and pop in your name and where you're from. Give us a little introduction to who you are and who's here. Again, if you need tech support, please email radicallyrural@hannahgrimes.com. Georgia, who is our incredible tech maiden, has popped that email address into the chat box so that you can get the help that you need. Also, you can chat with the full event, all 200 and 300 and I don't know how many people are here now, after lunch, hundreds of folks. You can chat with the full event or just with our session. You also have the opportunity to chat with one-on-one with anyone attending the conference. So you can click on people all the way over on the right-hand side, and that will allow you to search for someone and send them a private message. And I encourage you to have those one-on-one conversations, but not in our session chat, over in the people tab where you can do it, have it privately. So a few other housekeeping things. If you are excited about looking at somebody's face and getting a bigger picture and seeing them better, you can scroll your mouse over them and double click. That will make their image bigger. You can also scroll to the very top of the screen, and there is an icon with a line and an arrow next to how much time is left in our conference, which makes me really sad. There's only 2 hours. But that little icon will minimize the chat function and slide it right over to the side, so you can get a nice big picture, full screen view of your speakers. Also, there are little red dots in the chat bar, which will let you know if there is an announcement or if there is a conversation going on and you don't want to miss out on it. So keep your eye open for that if you've minimized your chat function. Obviously, thank you so much for your patience today with any technological glitches we may encounter. I've had one this week where my internet was unstable, so I am here downtown at the historic Latches Theater. I want to give a big shout out to them for hosting me today with their very fast movie internet. It's really exciting. So also I want to thank New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, New England Foundation for the Arts, Art of the Rural, the Putnam Foundation, and all of the organizing team of Radically Rural. And I'm so sorry, my phone is ringing and it's loud and annoying. So the last thing I want to say as far as housekeeping is you have the opportunity to edit your profile. So up in the right-hand corner, there's a little circle, either with your picture or your initials in it, and you can click on that and edit your name or change the way that you are appearing to folks. So you can also add your pronouns if you feel comfortable doing that. I've added my pronouns. So Jessica Gelter, she, her. All right, those are all the housekeeping details that I wanted to share with you before we get started. We will go into breakout sessions, which means we will leave this session, go to another session, and then return to this session. And we'll get into the details of how that will work later on. But knowing where the chat function is going to be key to being able to follow those instructions. So now for our welcome. Oh, I need to take a break. Oh, okay. So our culture, it's the expression of the story of who we are and what we value. The tools to tell that story come from a history of connections and sharing and exposure to people, places, technology, rituals, and the joys of our senses, the sounds, tastes, smells, sights, feelings that we experience. I personally honor Christmas with almost forgotten English carols and low brass instruments. I also often eat my food with chopsticks. And I celebrate the darkening of the year by telling hopeful stories by torchlight in the woods every October. All that connects me with who I am because it connects me with where I've come from, where I've been. We have these complex histories that shape us and that go back generations. And so do our communities, and so do the places that we inhabit. So before we jump into the expression and celebration of arts in our communities, of our stories, I'd like to acknowledge something about where we all are. Each of us conducts our business on traditional Indigenous lands. In our chat, I'm going to ask Georgia, our tech maiden, to place a link to a map where you can search for your location and find the names of the Indigenous communities that overlap where you are. In this way, we can all share acknowledging the names and the communities that underlay where we are. So the office I'm streaming to you from is in Endakina. It's the traditional homeland of the Sakoki, Pennacook, and Abenaki people, and it's part of the Wabanaki of yesterday and today. I'm so grateful to the Alnabak, the people who have stewarded Endakina through its many changes. The Abenaki call it Wantastagak. It was land given without a treaty or a purchase to Colonel William Brattle and set on maps as Brattleboro. But just like a map can omit a mountain, that mountain still exists. This place is still Wantastagak and is still the traditional home of the Abenaki. So what we're building in our radically rural communities can't assume to erase the history and legacies that are established, the story that has already been written, the good and the bad. But we can build better from where we are today, and arts are essential to that process. So today we're celebrating our radically rural arts, creativity, expression, and culture. And I'm welcoming you today by thinking about the story of who we are, how we got here, so we can really, with clarity and with respect, build a bright future together. So welcome to the final Arts and Culture track session of Radically Rural. I'm going to pass the program over to Marianne Barthel. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for that wonderful, wonderful introduction, welcome, and acknowledgement. I wanted to welcome you all to the Essential Arts session of the Radically Rural Conference, remote, and happy fall to everyone. We here in New England, I think one of the reasons we live here is because we love fall so much. So we're grateful for the changing seasons and the beautiful color and the art that Mother Nature provides us during this beautiful season. My name is Marianne Barthel. I am the director of the arts program at Dartmouth Hitchcock Health. And as an art director in a healthcare organization, I view healthcare, I view arts and humanities through a health lens. So whether it's in a hospital setting where there's data and research that support the idea that engaging with the arts and viewing arts can have positive outcomes and impact positively your health, both physically and mentally, I also believe that in our communities, the arts are essential to the health of those communities and the people within them. They're inextricably linked. So today, we're very, very fortunate to have wonderful colleagues here in New England on the panel who are artists themselves, individual artists, and parts of community organizations or educational institutions. And we are going to have a panel discussion this afternoon addressing 3 specific questions during the panel. And then we will go into breakout groups. And those breakout groups will give you the opportunity to take a deeper dive into some of the questions that we discussed in the panel, or you can choose a different room. We have 3 additional questions, and one of us will be in each of the rooms. Although unfortunately, Kate Bieber, who is having tremendous internet, is out in her rural area today, of all days. We all know what that can be like. She is the owner and a music therapist at Maine Music and Health. She will not be able to join us at this time. So feel free, we will make sure that someone is in that breakout group to help facilitate. And then we'll come back from the breakout groups and report out. And I encourage the participants who are here with us today to speak about what you talked about in your breakout group. So without further ado, I would love to have everyone in the panel introduce themselves, and I'm going to go around the room, so to speak. I'm going to start with Eugene. Eugene Uman, would you like to introduce yourself and what your role is in your community and in your organizations? Oh, Eugene, we can't hear you.
Important. Thank you, Marianne. Hi, thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Eugene Uman. I am the director of the Vermont Jazz Center here in Brattleboro, Vermont. And we do programs in education and performance, and with the essential arts that I'm feeling these days, we're trying to see how we can communicate our programs via live stream, via outdoor events, via ways that are still resonating with the public. And I'm feeling like we've been achieving that. We've just had a summer jazz workshop, which was a tremendous success because we're trying to look for the silver linings in this very difficult situation.
Thank you, Eugene. Cynthia Cutting, I'll have you go next.
Hi, I'm Cynthia, and I'm the director at the Museum of the White Mountains, which is located as part of Plymouth State University in Plymouth, New Hampshire, in the White Mountains, or the foothills of the White Mountains, anyway. So our museum is the center for our art and culture in the region. So our exhibitions normally run year-round in 3 different locations, including the museum building, and include exhibitions about the history, the art, recreation, the environment of the region, as well as work made by Plymouth State students and faculty.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cynthia. Craig, how about you? Craig Stockwell.
Yeah, hi. Craig Stockwell. I live here in Keene, New Hampshire, and have been here for 32 years, negotiating the line between being a rural artist, a community-based artist, but also with a deep connection with New York and with being a national artist. I was the director of the low residency MFA program at New Hampshire Institute of Art for 7 years. That program ceased to exist last year because of a merger. But through that time, I primarily worked with adult students trying to actually negotiate that question of sustainability for their art, and primarily people from rural communities.
Thank you. Amanda Whitworth.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Amanda Whitworth, not you, but I'm having trouble getting my name to stick down there.
So, we can see it, Amanda.
Okay, we can see your name, yes.
Amanda, I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I've had the pleasure of being on the conference today. So Cynthia and I are both in New Hampshire, which is the land of the Abenaki and Wabanaki peoples. And actually where I am is at Plymouth State University, which actually sits on a section of the Underground Railroad, which is a really interesting and significant history here in central New Hampshire. I am a person who loves to collaborate, and I'm most interested in cultivating space and networks for creatives in order to create impactful art and innovative experiences for communities across the world. I do that in several different ways. One of those ways is being a dancer. That's my favorite way. And I serve the state of New Hampshire as our 8th artist laureate and first dancer to take on that role. I hope to uncover some history of dance in our Northern Forest through that 2-year service. I spend a lot of my time here at Plymouth State University, where I'm part of the team in music, theater, and dance. And I am really charged up by working with young leaders to create pathways through arts and culture. And I also have recently founded a nonprofit that brings arts into health. It's called Artisan, and we do programming in terms of physical theater performance. We create curriculum and also do standardized patient engagements. So it's a busy, awesome time to be creative in the Shire. So here we are.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you again for being here and sharing your expertise and your creativity. I neglected to mention where Dartmouth Hitchcock Health is located. It's located in New Hampshire. Our flagship hospital is in Lebanon, New Hampshire. And I wanted to go into the panel discussion with the frame of mind that we have 2 huge issues that we are all sharing. One, of course, is the fact that we're from rural areas, yet the big elephant in the room, shall we say, is the pandemic, which is affecting artists equally in rural and more populated areas and cities, et cetera. And I felt like it was especially important to comment on the fact that wherever I've gone, either personally or professionally, and I haven't gone many places, but the arts have really been taking the lead on helping people through these times, whether it's in helping people deal with stress, helping people deal with isolation, etc., which really reinforces the idea of how essential the arts are. So we wanted to talk to this group about what they're doing to maintain that connection, how things may have changed, how things have pivoted. We certainly have pivoted what we're doing in the hospital setting. We've all of us have gone to remote formats. And so this is a great afternoon to talk about ideas and strategies, and hopefully we'll come out of this with ways to support one another and help each other continue being the essential force that we are in our communities. Without further ado, I'm going to jump to the first question, and I'm hoping that each panelist will give a response to the question or build upon someone else's response. During this time of the pandemic, how have you or your organizations that you work with stretched your creativity beyond what you had done in the past to meet the challenges of this time? And if you can give an example of something you've done, that would be great. We'll start with Craig, if you're okay with doing that, and then, or if someone else is ready to go, that's fine too.
Yeah, and I'm going to represent more the voice of the individual artist than the organizational voice. And 2 things. One, beginning in March, I began a project called the Illuminated Manuscripts. And with the shutdown, I was very concerned with, what to go to the studio every day. I wanted to go to the studio every day. I wanted to work, but what was the purpose of this work at this time? I ended up making and mailing out 110 paintings to random people selected from a sort of Instagram game. I mean, I put the word out there and said the first 10 people to respond and so on. And I started spreading these, I called them illuminated manuscripts. I was thinking of the Dark Ages and how the monks on the islands off of Ireland kept civilization alive in this time, and sending off this little bit of light and this little bit of handmade thing to people. And So it was a real change in practice. I mean, I'm generally, in the past, I've been a gallery artist, I've been a such, but I wanted to break, I had to break into that system and have it perform differently for me. The other thing I would mention is that because of the shutdown, for example, in the last 4 days, I've sat in on a lecture from BU. I've sat in on an artist talk from Tribeca in New York. The access that, since so many things are happening in a kind of Zoom format now, things that otherwise would have required my personal presence in the past, have allowed me access to a really wide, sophisticated art world, and the ability of a rural artist to be quite included in the conversation that I love.
That's great. That's great. I'm so glad to hear about all those.
Yeah.
How about you, Cynthia? How have you responded?
I love what you said, Craig, because that totally, it's interesting to think about it from the organizational perspective, because exactly what you're talking about, having that access, was what we felt in March was, oh my gosh, we have to switch gears completely and empathize with artists like you, but community members, with our students, with our faculty, and think about what kinds of things our constituents really need, and what do we have to switch and present in this not new, but online format. In the past, our exhibitions, we made them into online exhibitions, but usually subsequent to the physical exhibits, because our goal was to get people in the building. So all of a sudden, nobody in the building. So what is our community? What are we trying to do? So I was so proud of my students and professional staff members who were right there with me and switched gears so fast. And we came up with basically 3 categories of things that we needed to provide. One was, yes, we need to provide visual enrichment. So we need to get whatever we have for we had an exhibition that people hadn't been coming to yet, and we had our capstone for our students, our BFA exhibit that hadn't been created yet, that all needed to happen online fast. Secondly, we wanted to provide informational experiences. So a little more than what you would get by just reading something on a screen. What kinds of engagement or educational experiences could we provide? And the third one, which actually became our first fast-moving thing, was fun. We felt the need, as we did as people in the same situation as everyone, of that, being that fear, that being alone, that kind of panic about what's going to be happening and adjusting to the new situation. We really thought we need to have something that feels fun and fast. And so one project we created right away, we called the Museum Fridge. And we just wanted it to be a hardly curated, easy place for people to just pop up, upload a photo, a sketch, a complete painting, something from way past, something they just made, whatever they wanted, even and written work, in response to a weekly prompt. So we posted the prompt and then, invited people to upload, and it got traction pretty fast. And as part of that, what we decided we really needed to do is, instead of like a monthly email newsletter thing to our members and friends, we needed to do a weekly thing. And so that was a major change of our practice in the office. But we found that immediate response to people who were following us and reading it and felt like they were hungry and they were eating it up. So we kept that going throughout all spring, through to the end of the summer, just continuing to add content. But thinking of those 3 categories, what are these learning things we can do? How can we keep adding more visual experiences? And how can we make this fun and provide links to maybe some lighthearted things to look at?
That's wonderful. I want to go in your deep dive session because I want to hear about all the details about that. But anyway, okay, great. Amanda, would you like to comment on how you were stretched creatively during this time?
Sure. So as an individual artist, with this recent trophy of success as Artist Laureate of New Hampshire, the pandemic and specifically Black Lives Matter has been extraordinarily intense to think about how I make art, who I make it for, and how I want to continue my practice. And so what I learned is that right now it's my time to step back. And to be honest, I have felt for my individual practice pretty frozen because there's a lot of things I'm wrestling with. And they don't necessarily have to do with the value of what I have to offer, but I want to tell stories that are layered, honest, all of those things. And that takes listening for some time. So since March, I sort of halted any of my sort of personal projects that were propelled as like, Amanda is dancing the show. And I've engaged in opportunities of service and collaboration primarily. As an organization, so I'll talk about my nonprofit organization called Artisan. We really, because it was brand new, this is sort of a brand, just getting nonprofit status, 501c3 status, even though we've been doing work, was really important to consider strategic planning right off of the bat and listen to the stories around us so that any sort of product or presentation or experience that we cultivate is doing the thing that we hope it will do and serving our stakeholders, audience, benefactors, whatever you want to call them. So one of the things we thought about specifically was how we push our information out. So in a rural space, right, we have some real inconsistency with broadband internet. So not everybody is able to jump on their Facebook, their Instagram, their whatever it is to get information. So we thought about different avenues from newspapers to phone calls to videos to social media to think about how we may want to propel our message. And that continues to be a real learning curve. So that's something we're thinking about.
Those are all really great thoughts, especially listening. Yeah, that's such a huge piece of what we need to do individually and as communities, and also service and collaboration, which we'll touch on in a little bit. Eugene, I don't think we've had a chance to listen to your story.
Yes, thank you.
There you are.
I'm here. The idea of stretching by using your creativity fascinates me because that's what we are. We're artists and we're trained to be improvisers and we're trained to take new situations. So it's interesting. And I think that this whole conference might look to the artists as ways of coming up with new ideas and how to solve problems because we're all starting with a clean slate. So I find that really fascinating. And I think that it's also scary. And we've been struggling, trying to come up with ways to produce, as an organization, programs that still resonate with our audiences. Love music, with the people who have a sense of community, because that's one of the things. And I think that those of us who work like Cynthia at the museum or Amanda at the school, part of what we do is we bring people together, and that's one of the functions of art, is to bring people together. And so it's really become kind of a difficult situation on how to make people still feel that the arts are what is drawing them together in a communicative kind of a way. And so we've done all kinds of things that I feel, again, alluding to my introduction, was looking for the silver lining. And I heard other people talking about this as well. Craig, for example, saying, you know, he can now go to lectures that happen in Tribeca. Well, what we have done is we've reached out to our musician community all over the world, in fact, and included those artist presenters within our academic program. So we have this educational program that was kind of stuck because it was like, oh my God, we've got this, you know, system that really worked. And then all of a sudden we have to figure out ways that will still attract people and build community at the same time. So one of the things that we did, for example, in our summer workshop was all of, like, let's say you played bass, and every day from 9 to 10 o'clock, you would get a bass masterclass. All the bass players would come together with a different bass player from around the world. In fact, one of our artists was Linda O, who lives in Perth, Australia. So I just love the fact that we can include people who love to teach and who are really musically oriented and who want to bring people together because of something that they love, and use that no matter where they are. So that was one of the things that we've done. And then another thing is that we can also do this from a live streaming point of view. As musicians, one of the things that we have to do in order to stay alive, in fact, that is one of our big stumbling blocks at this point, is that we don't have earned income. So how do we generate that earned income? And what we've done is we've gone to live streaming, and we have found that by not having a ticket price, by having all of our events be free or by donation, that people have been giving to us. But part of the way that we are cultivating that is by adding new narratives. And this kind of reminds me of what Amanda was talking about, is that we need to draw people in by making this honest and personal, and by having interviews. So for example, Terry Lynn Carrington, who is an amazing drummer, and she did our performance in March. And what she did was she brought some videos that they had done spur of the moment. And then we had an interview with her and Susan Rosenberg, who's an activist, and John Murph, who's a great writer in DC. So we brought the three of them together to discuss the topics of the music. So it didn't become just a music show. It became a show that was dealing about social issues. So I think what's happening is that we are able to be more expansive as artists, to reach out, to be able to see things from different perspectives than we have in the past.
Thank you. That was really wonderful, and you've all had excellent examples that I think everyone can build upon. All of you also talked a little bit about collaboration in some way. I was wondering if you could expand upon that a little bit, about ways that you collaborate in the community. And when we discussed this question earlier, we were thinking community, and as we're talking now, I think community has grown to, because of the remote nature and virtual nature of all these connections, that community is now everywhere. But how have you been collaborating, like you just explained, Eugene, with these different artists that you've brought in? Does anyone want to start first, or I can pick someone? I'll have Cynthia. Do you want to go, or no?
Sure, it's fine. Yeah. I really love, I just have to just tag onto your line you were talking about, Eugene, the idea of adding narrative. I just love that. And I think that really it ties in with the collaboration piece, and also with what Amanda was saying about listening. I think what's happened in this moment is we've gotten back to some of those essential qualities of the arts in that they are personal experiences that connect to our individual heart, mind, soul, but they also reflect where we live and the specific culture that we're in. So all of these kind of layers are coming out, and we're reminding each other of the importance of these kinds of experiences, which is great in a time. This is great fodder for what we're going to need for advocacy later. But the collaboration piece is so important. It's really at the center of my being all the time. I'm a teaching artist. I'm been an educator in a classroom. And now working with my community, as you say, Marianne, that's kind of expanded. What do we even mean by that? But I guess I think now about community as people who are kind of reaching for it. I was in a great session earlier in the conference that, oh no, it was the keynote, where it was said that you're not going to get the people that you never had, like thinking about the people that are your community that you need to keep working with. So anyway, it's really interesting. Collaboration. So one of the things that the museum really is for our community is we are a bridge between the town and the gown. So we walk that line. We are one of the doorways that people in this area participate in the university, and the university serves the community. So one of the projects that happened in the last 6 months was initiated from the university and kind of has gone through the doorway of the museum and into the community. And it's called the Community of Caring's Flag Project. So this project was designed for to kind of get people to talk about their fear about students coming back in the fall for the fall semester, and what that was going to do for this small town of Plymouth, having 4,000 students come back from wherever they were in whatever health state they were to our community. And so this art project became a vehicle for conversation. So we have flag, simple fabric rectangles that I've been ripping up for months and dyeing and such, and getting them in the hands of people all over the area, and as well as school children and Plymouth State students and faculty and staff, and asking them to write their wishes, to think about the people that they're living with now here in the community, to think of themselves as part of a larger context, which is, I guess, the more important step, and to write a message. How are you feeling? What do you want to share with other people? It can be, there's then some saying just simply said anxious. That was a flag. And then there was another flag that was, I care about my community, so I'm wearing a mask. So all of these, the whole range of messages are happening. And what's lovely is that I get to take those flags and sew them into a flag, what I'm calling a flag stream. And I feel like I'm sewing together the community as I'm doing that. It's really interesting, kind of listening to these different voices that are not always things that I would say, but putting them together, and then we're installing them along Main Street. It's just it's a great kind of, it's an interesting collaboration, because it's not like people are talking to each other. So they're sending these messages to a space, and then it becomes a thing together. So that's an interesting kind of way to start. But I think that the idea of, like, we went door to door with our businesses to see if they would help by having the flags there in the town, and be a place where people could bring them back safely. These door to door listening, talking kind of things are really, really important. And the other project I just wanted to mention is collaborating with artists in our area and thinking about them. I mean, it's been very hard. The venues where they would normally, have their work for sale, obviously were closed. Some are starting to reopen, but it made people panic. And so we have several ways to talk to artists in our area. One of them is a group that's, they call themselves the Plymouth Pod. It's a whole bunch of artists, and they usually got together about once a month, and I would be participating in that, listening to what's going on with them, and we've shaped shows and ideas together before. And they immediately, when COVID started, they said, can we do this every other week? And it's become a listening session. It's become a support system. And it's become, you know, talking from your studio to each other. They share an artwork and just chat. It's been really, really useful. And helping to problem solve what they need to do next. It's been great. Sorry, that's enough of my turn.
Yeah. Craig, I'd love to hear you.
Yeah, well, I see a conversation going on in the chat to some extent about the struggle to keep going in this time. And I think one of the fascinating, you know, both troublesome and wonderful givens of this time is that the existing structures have fallen apart, and the things that have kept us going, and the markets that we have, and the teaching jobs we have, and all those things are under question. And you know, existentially, for an artist, that's a very rich moment. It's a very painful moment. But I think, as you just talking about that group, for example, so when the thoughts in the studio turn to this simple thing of, you know, what am I doing? How am I doing it? Why am I doing it? And who can I talk to about it? And I think that's the extension of this time. You know, you're talking about this group that gets together. That is the collaboration we need to sustain us. We're not going to get through this with our wheels spinning in our heads. And so it actually provides a moment. We are going to be reinventing the next phase of the art world, the next phase of the creative world. And I also mentioned education, because I think the whole question of, I start from my bubble of higher education in the arts, but you know, just look at elementary education, just look at everything right now, and it's, you know, it's going to be really different 5 years from now, I think, because of both the positives and the negatives we come out of this with. That's, again, it's a painful moment, but it's so rich to be reinventing this moment.
Yeah. I do want to be mindful of the time. So we did have one more question we wanted to try and get in. So if Amanda or Eugene, if you have points that you want to add, maybe we can do that in the report outs to that discussion, to that question. And again, in the interest of time, can you give me, or the group, you know, maybe 2 next steps that you're looking to do to sustain your work? What are the next steps that you are doing to sustain your work? And more of a kind of a bullet point for the interest of time, because as we talked about when we planned this, we could talk about each of these questions all day.
So I can say with clarity, collective impact strategy, thinking about the intersection of different sectors to create change and have greater impact. Also, in all my conversations with Cynthia, she's a great, one of my favorite collaborators here, and many people who are participating in this conference, we have been talking a lot about how to reframe deficit-based narratives of our rural places and spaces, and put an eye toward assets and tell us that affirms the value of our people, our lands, our practice, our culture, right? And to say that proudly, say that consistently, say that with strength, show that with metrics, be brave, bold, and radical, right? About that story we tell as our entire nation shifts its eyes toward equity.
Thank you, Amanda. That was beautifully stated. Thankfully, we have it recorded so we can write it down. Anyone else want to comment on their next steps to sustain your work? Oh, Eugene, you're muted.
to discuss very briefly that technology is now a really important part of our vision forward. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is how we can reach more people by using live streaming technology. And that is something that we've been learning about ever since this whole thing began. And we've invested a lot of money, and we're going for grants because of that. So I think that now, and this relates to my comment earlier on, is that we're looking forward to continuing the same work that we've been doing, but with more of an effort towards expansiveness.
That's great. Thank you. Cool. Anyone else want to comment on next steps? If not, we're right back on track. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction and instructions to the breakout sessions. So our wonderful tech guru is going to put links to each of the breakout rooms. There are 6 breakout rooms with a maximum capacity for 9 people. So if you can't get into a room, that means that it's full and you'll have to choose another room. The breakout rooms, I'll list them in order and by number. Breakout room number 1 is addressing the question, and I'll be in this room, addressing the question, what do you need to change and adapt swiftly to changing needs in your community? So again, I'll repeat that. What do you need to change and adapt to swiftly changing needs in your community? That's breakout room number 1. Breakout room number 2 is going to be led by Cynthia, and they're going to go into a deep dive about ways in which you can collaborate in your community. Again, deep dive into ways that you can collaborate in your community. That's breakout number 2. Breakout number 3 is going to be run by Amanda. And the question you'll be focusing on is, how are you challenging the status quo in your community? How are you radically rural? I think you answered that, but it's going to be a nice opportunity to take another look at that question. Question number 4, or room number 4, along with question number 4, we will have, maybe Jessica can jump in there because Kate, who was having technical difficulties, Kate was going to lead that group. But if no one's in there, please assign a, just a spokesperson if no one can make it in there to lead from the panel. What essential role do you or does your organization provide in your community, depending on what you represent in your community? So again, breakout room number 4, the question is, what essential role do you or your organization provide in your community? Breakout room number 5 is another deep dive about stretching your creativity to meet the challenges of this time and tips on what creative solutions have worked for you. And that's going to be Eugene leading that group in breakout number 5. Again, what have you been doing to stretch your creativity to meet these times? And lastly, breakout number 6 is another deep dive about your next steps. And Craig's going to be leading that group. What are your next steps to sustain your work? We'll be in there till about 3:20. We'll want to return, and again, our wonderful tech guru will put a link in the chat in order for us to return. So please look for that link, and session leaders, if you could keep an eye on the time to kind of remind folks that at 3:20 you'll be coming back in, and then we'll report out on kind of the key points that people brought up in their groups, and then we'll wrap it up. And time is flying. So again, I invite you to go into the chat and look for the session that you are most interested in attending and jump in on that. I'm going to head into my session, which is session 1. Hi, Eugene.
Hey, I'm back.
Welcome back.
The technology works. Thank you, Georgia.
You're welcome,
So
everyone.
cool. I wanted to stay there. What a cool group.
Same.
That's excellent. That's definitely what I want to hear. All righty, I'm gonna give it one.
I have one question of Georgia. Georgia, if we have one of the participants who wants to do the discussion or to report back, is that something that's possible, or is that something that I need to do?
I have the permission to add them. And when the time comes, just let me know when that can happen.
Thank you.
And what about Kate? Is she with us, but not video with us?
She was there briefly, but
Oh, I didn't even see her.
I can't see who the participants are, sadly. I can just see the number. But if you're out there, Kate, you can hit the blue button that says share audio and video.
Are we waiting for something?
I checked all the groups. It looked like everybody was gone out of the groups. So
Can hear you, Marianne.
Probably a good thing because my dogs were starting to make noise. So welcome back, everybody. I must have subconsciously muted them out right away. Yeah, so if Georgia is able to let folks in, that would be super helpful. But if not, we'll just go back to our session leaders. I understand everybody had great, rich conversations.
do you want me to add her now or when it's time to speak?
So I think we'll start with Chantalee Gander. Is that right, Eugene?
Yeah, that's right.
Great.
She'll be reporting from our group about Think Towards the Future.
Great.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi. So we in our group, we had Sean Mooningham. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Eugene was our leader, and John Kern. And we all talked about the different ways of moving forward. And there were some themes. A lot of the themes that came up involved social media and better leveraging our social media. One of the points that Sean Mooningham, who oversees an artist residency, talked about was some of the challenges that involved packaging social media and online, especially with visual artists. John Kern shared, Sean Mooningham, I think I confused them. John Kern is the one that oversees the residency. Sean Mooningham is an executive director at a high school theater group, and they also have launched into an online show YouTube called 6 Feet Apart, where they're socially distant, and something hopefully that they'll be able to carry through after this. John Kern added one of the pieces he took away from one of the other sessions is the idea of succeed or fail. This idea that not all the technologies that we're using or adapting may necessarily be able to transfer over, but also the thread that hopefully these are things not necessarily meant to totally take the place of in person, but will help us to leverage and make use of this time and would help to support our work going forward. Did I get all of that, Eugene?
You got it very well, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Shanta, for helping. And I think that these takeaways are also that we realize. One of the things that John said is that, we're in the dark with a flashlight, and we can't
Yeah.
really see the big picture right now. So it feels like we're just kind of out there trying to illuminate things that are going to help us. And I personally feel like because of that, there's a sense of vulnerability that is connecting us all and giving us this spiritual element that is connecting us all. And we're all really sympathetic and empathetic to what's going on with other arts organizations and other people. And that I think we're in a really fruitful time for the development of the arts. And thank you to my group. That was a lot of fun.
That's
Thank you.
wonderful. Gosh, so inspiring and hopeful and uplifting. Great. With the other breakout groups, did you have someone you wanted to report out, or are you reporting out yourself? Just give me, if you give the name of the person reporting out, so we can let them in, or if you want to do, pardon me, that is my dog. They're fighting over the dog bed of who gets the comfy spot. So Craig, did you want to report out, or someone in your group?
I'll report, but Jim Murphy, if you're there, you can type in that you're there, and maybe you could add a little bit. Curiously, my group consisted of people I know from the Keene area, and he's here. So actually, if you want to let Jim Murphy in, and he could report out a little. I would say we talked at length about the impact that COVID and the shutdown has had on our own work, on our community, and interestingly enough, mostly very positive in terms of, the way that we are reimagining doing things. I think there was, in particular, the music. It seemed to really face a challenge in terms of. And yet some very unique experiences were described, where new and unique music experiences, listening both in person outdoors and online experiences. But Jim, you want to add to that?
Well, I think, some of it was expressed in other groups, but just basically that, you don't have to travel. That's a plus. And then you get to see people that you normally wouldn't be able to see because of distance. And, it could be on the other side of the world. But also, like Craig was saying, he's able to take courses at different places, New York and everywhere else, which couldn't do before. And as far as music, Carl and I both do music also. I found that with my band, I don't miss having it right now, and I don't know if I'll go back to it. But I've been recording in my own studio, and it just I have a lot of freedom there. But also with home studio, I did have an operation on my legs, two new knees, and March 3rd. But once I got recovered, I was just like, now I'm just like overly prolific in painting, and because I have too many paintings. But I have been able to sell some, which surprised me, and make some okay money. But also, I have figured out how to get my paintings out there in different ways. Like at the Colonial Theater, they had an open space, open window, so I've been having 6 paintings up there and getting a lot of feedback. And so it's like an ongoing exhibit, and I've changed the paintings, and I will again. And things like that. So some different opportunities. In some ways, it's more relaxing, and I'm having fun.
That's wonderful. And again, I really appreciate the uplifting, positive outlook. I find it really fascinating. So many people are viewing this as such a restrictive time. You can't go to certain places. You can't be with different people. Yet you really point out that in a lot of ways, there's so much more freedom. I mean, you can go take a class anywhere in the world. And so it's just really exciting to really turn those ideas on their heads. All righty. Amanda, do you have someone that you want to report out? And if you do, they will need to request to share audio and video.
I'm going to report out for our group. It was awesome. And I had a really beautiful conversation with Kirsten, Catherine, Faith, Sarah, Sophie, and Deneen. Our question was, how are you challenging the status quo in your community? And all of these women are doing ferocious, brave, amazing thinking and work. And they told stories. So we did a story circle. They told stories about specific things that are on their minds and also tangible projects that they are working on delivering and cultivating. But at the end of that conversation, something that was surprising to me, and I think all of us, was that through all of the challenges, there were so many words of joy and delight in the descriptions. And I wanted to share some of those things. These are the words that we took away. Shake it up. Reframe the story. Do it together, center. Assets. Lift up more. Give space. Acknowledging family. It was really wonderful and beautiful way to end the day.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful way to end our day. We do still have one more though. Cynthia, I would like to.
I don't like following that act. No fair. I'll just report quickly for our small group. We had a lovely conversation in which we dug in. We had some examples of projects that we talked about, but we really dug into the idea of what it means to collaborate. And what it means what that means to the people involved. And we talked about, Claire had a comment about empowerment, maybe not being a great word to use, because it introduces some hierarchical kind of ideas, which may not be really helpful. Sorry, there's a motorcycle going by my house. But we talked about establishing some rules in collaborations and being clear about what that means to collaborate and what are the parameters of that, so that people feel comfortable and invited and feel included in the process. It's really interesting. We talked about overlapping initiatives in our rural areas when we're trying to have a community collaborative project, maybe inviting multiple initiatives into the same thing, because we're all encountering some burnout with the collaborators in the community being the same kind of group people every time. So thinking about bringing in other initiatives to enrich that and keep the energy going. And we were finishing our conversation talking about the balance of making our own personal work in relation to our kind of passion about community and collaborations. Got cut short, and we would have continued for longer. So thank you to my group. It was great.
Thank you. That was really great. What wonderful, rich conversations you had, and you all had the lion's share of the participants. So Georgia and I had some really interesting discussions about her work in Arts Alive, and already are discussing possible collaborations. So we were touching on all of that. So it was a really interesting, fun conversation for us as well. So I wanted to, we have a few minutes to wrap up. Jessica.
Oh, I
forgot you were on Kate's group.
I was Kate today.
You were Kate today. So one more report out.
And I'd love to invite Dominique Miller to join me in reporting out a little bit from our group. It was just the two of us. And so, we were talking about organizational value and like, what do we bring to the community? That's what sort of sparked our conversation. But we ended up talking a lot about the systems in which we operate and what might our organizations, or Dominique's organization in particular, be able to do to navigate around the more challenging systematic barriers that exist for creating a more holistic creative community. So, Dominique, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about the specifics of what we were saying.
Sure. So I work at New England College at the Institute of Art and Design, so which obviously you're familiar with. So one of the things that it made me think about was, what is the role that institution feels it plays? What are the assumptions about the role that place plays? And then what role does it actually play? With higher ed being this idea of educating, right? Educating and informing and preparing young people or adults to go off into the world or to become successful in some right. And there's the responsibility that comes with that, and particularly in this moment, and with political systems or just systems nationally, how are you preparing people to live or to exist, right, in these systems or in this place or in these structures, and how does this structure reflect those, like examining kind of our own structures and in what ways these may either inhibit people, or is it really nurturing creativity or for people to think outside of the box. And one thing we ended up talking about was and there's so many levels, the need for flexibility, I think particularly in the work that a lot of us do, but the need to really be adaptive and to be able to make shifts, which I think has been at the root of some of the conversations around the pandemic, or as it pertains to arts and culture, if you talk about things like placemaking or community work. Really the need to be, I think, reflective of where you're at, but also be responsive to what's going on and how things change. I don't know that that's always necessarily a skill that's taught or really kind of drilled upon. I'll say necessarily where I work and just my experience as a student coming through various schools, but it is an essential role. So just, I think a question that I think we landed on talking about was kind of how to have these conversations in higher ed, or who were the people to have them with to actually have some impact and to actually be able to talk about ways to make shifts and in ways that are doing so with our community, which includes engaging the youth and the students, in all these different levels, and how to do so in a way that's reflective of what their particular needs are, and also in a way that's reflective of what we're all going through as a society, nationwide, but also globally. How do we do that? And it's an essential role because these are places that people look to, again, to be informed and have an expectation out of this was something really valuable, and with an expectation to be able to execute something, or with an expectation of being able to move forward in whatever way that means, but to be able to live and exist in this place. So those are some of the things we talked about.
Those were incredibly rich conversations. All of them were, and it would have been great to be a fly on the wall in every single chat room there, or breakout room. We're coming to the end of our time, and I wrote down a few words similar to how Amanda had pulled together some words from her group just throughout the day, some of the words that jumped out at me. Listening, community, service, collaboration, art as a vehicle for conversation, adaptability, essential, arts. So I just want to take this time to thank our panelists, Craig Stockwell, Cynthia Cutting, Eugene Uman, Amanda Whitworth, and Kate Beaver, who put in a lot of work as well, even though she had technical problems. Sorry, we missed you, Kate. I would like to thank the organizers of the Radically Rural Remote Conference, and in particular, Jessica Gelter, who was wonderful to work with. I'm so grateful to be included with this amazing group of people doing this incredible work in our communities. I think that if nothing else, we see how much we are better together. And that's demonstrated both with this format and with all the discussions we had and what came out of it. I just want to say, be well, stay healthy, and continue on with the wonderful work that you're doing. And feel free to reach out to any of us anytime for further discussion. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.